Hello, everybody. It's Terry. Just sitting in my garden, listening to the birds sing and enjoying this perfect time right now. And I wanted to touch base with you. Some of you have read my book, some of you have not. Stepping Stones on the Soul's Journey. Some of you have not, but I want to encourage you. And some of the feedback I've received from people is, "Oh, that's amazing! It's amazing how you wrote that and put it together. It's amazing how all those things in your life connected." But that was the purpose of me writing it, was was so other people could experience that and then look at their own life and see how all those things connected in their life. And sometimes it takes more than a couple of years. In my case, this is a story about me from 30 years ago, 20 to 30 years ago. And it took me till 20 years after that point in the early to mid 90s. It took me that long to go back and look at it and see how all these little moments, how these times connected. And in writing the book, it took me even longer, which was 30 years later, not 20 years later. It took me longer to go and piece all those together. So back in 2010, 2000, between 2010 2020, I kept thinking it was something that I wanted to write and to be able to share all this stuff so others could see this. Around 2000, I wanted to write about it because it was fun and it would be interesting to write about my early days when I first was on my own, rebuilding my life in a foreign country, all these things. And then it was later, when I got to it, looking at it later, I realized that it took a lot more to put it all together, because these are threads that are woven. You can look at it like a mosaic. One of my mentors calls that as your life is a mosaic, and you see all these little chips and stones that put together. I see it sometimes as a rug. So you're weaving all these threads together. There's so many ways to talk about it, but what occurred to me was, as I started writing, I didn't even think about it. First, I thought, oh, I'm just going to write this, and I had a few situations that I wanted to share that I had insight on. And then I decided to write the whole thing, and I figured I would find out more. But what ended up finding that I found out was this was like a rug that was woven, or a tapestry that was woven, and all these threads came together. And it doesn't appear right away. You don't think about it a year or two after it happens. You a lot of times have to go back 20 years and look and see how all these threads wove together to bring you to where you are now. And as I did that, I realized, and now I'm piecing together the threads from 2015 to now, so the last 10 years, and seeing how all those threads wove together. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get a good glimpse. So that's why I put the halt on the action in the book, roughly 2010, because I didn't have enough insight to see how they're woven together. And in fact, I only have the insight to go back to 2006 or so and be able to see how these threads wove together. I'm rambling, but this is what I want you to see: is this is not my story because it's special. This is my story that I'm sharing because it's also your story. And as you get to thinking, you'll start weaving all these things together in your life and saying, aha, oh, that thing that happened back in 1998, or that thing that happened in 2010, that meant this. So, where it gets me is when I say soul's journey, it is really your soul's journey. Your soul, your higher self determined, you at a soul level decided what you need to do in this life. And all these things are in the script, so to speak. All the world's a stage. It's all written in here. And these players that show up in your life, some of them you meet on a bus or on a flight to New York and you have a conversation and you never see this person again. But the joys of Facebook, we tend to meet people and stick with them. But 30 years ago, you'd meet somebody and you'd never see them again. And those were all players in your life, in your script. And the same way, all these pieces in your life weave together all these lifetimes that you've had, some of them happening at the same time, some of them happening, there's no continuous time, so to speak. Some of these other lives that you've lived, that you've learned things that are weaving together something for you to learn this great, amazing thing in this life or in the next life. And we don't know how it all fits together, but we can work with what we do know. We can go back to a time in third grade when you talked to your teacher and you had an insight. One of my colleagues talked about how she collected rocks. I did too. And a lot of us rock collectors turn out to be working with crystals later on in our life. But at 7 years old, you don't really know. You just say, oh, what a cute rock. And her story came to, that was something that a family member had talked to her about and probably influenced her in that. And she still works with crystals because those little things that we recognize in our life when we're young, that light us up, that brings us something. And okay, you're not Elton John that knew when you were 12 years old that you wanted to go to Juilliard and study music and or whatever, and you wanted to do this, you wanted to be famous, you had this hunch. Those people have these hunches about it and they move up to it, but at the same time, there may be hunches that you have that you discount. So I want to bring those things up too, is the little things in our life that we don't know why we do it, or we don't know why we recognize it. It may be a song on the radio. It may be a job that you take. It may be little things, but they add up, something that you really enjoy doing that shows up and it comes into your life and it comes to fruition in a way that you may notice, or you may just have this huge awakening moment that says, oh my God, this is something. So the deal about the crystals, yeah, I was attracted to crystals. I like to go to souvenir shops that sold rocks and tiger's eye and goldstone and all this. And it was cute. And I never got the connection to that when I was 7 collecting these little rocks to when I was 21 and buying amethyst and quartz and these big quartz clusters that I had back then that woke me up to something in my life that works with crystals. But that, as my colleague said, her family member said, oh, you're going to be a geologist when you grow up. Adults can oversimplify it. This can be a small facet of your life. So I want to share that in that way to get you to think of just because you were 7 years old and you like to cook. I'm going to pause this a sec. Just because you were 7 years old and you love to cook doesn't mean you're going to be a chef when you grow up. The cooking can be a metaphor for something else. And these things, the people that I met in my life wove together and led me to meet somebody else, and eventually coming to what I'm doing in my life and to meet my life partner and all these things that do happen. But you have to be a detective. You have to be an archaeologist to go back into your life and excavate all these pieces and find out where it goes. So I'm telling you this so you'll decide to become curious and see where all these things are taking you and see if it brings something in your life. And you may not be an author, you may not decide to write your life story, but I also encourage you to take notes and go back and look at it and see where it leads you or see what connects to what, because this breaks up this huge mystery that comes in our lives where we tend to think, well, where did this leave me? And it is a huge mystery, but it's also reachable. So that's something that you can find and you can discover as you go back in there. So I wanted to share that, and there'll be more as I get these insights I want to share. I'll be sharing more and more. So please look forward to seeing what comes up next. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day.